Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for coming this evening. For those who have never been to a Next Door Nature webinar before, I'll just give you a tiny bit of background before I hand over to our guest speakers for this evening. So we've been running these webinars for quite a while, and the idea is that they're for basically anyone in Scotland who wants to lead action for nature where they live. So whether it's someone who's a really well-established community leader or someone who's literally just starting out, curious, doesn't quite know how to get started, this is kind of a place for everyone to kind of come together and hear stories, get inspiration and ask questions and so on. And originally these webinars were just for the people that were signed on to our Next Door Nature Pioneers programme, which was like a funded project that ran until October last year. But then after the project ended, we loved it so much and we loved all the people we worked with, we didn't want it to stop. So now we're running these webinars kind of once every quarter, and we're opening it up to a wider pool of people. So kind of trying to expand the network of people that are all working together to take action for nature around Scotland. So I thought that litter would be a really interesting topic for a webinar, because when we were doing the Next Door Nature Pioneers programme, so many of the applications that came through mentioned litter and mentioned bins and wanting to do something about it. And I thought there's definitely something there. You know, litter is something that, you know, it really stirs up strong feelings in people. And it's like a really good way to bring people together from different parts of a community, because even people who maybe don't think of themselves as being outdoorsy or into nature or wildlife and stuff still can get really passionate about litter and fly tipping and want to do something about it. So that's kind of what tonight's webinar is about. So it's not necessarily really about the kind of how do you organise a litter pick, although I do have links that I can share, and you know, we can talk about that if people want to at the end. But really what it's all about is that kind of community organising power in a litter pick, how taking quite a simple action that benefits both people and wildlife can kind of grow into something bigger and even more impactful. And that's kind of why I'm delighted that we've got two really great guest speakers tonight who can share those kind of stories with us. I'll let them speak for themselves, they can tell their stories, so I won't do big introductions, but we're going to hear first from Scott from Green Hive, and then we'll pass over to Mike, who's from Community Cleanup. They're going to tell you a bit of their stories, and then at the end we'll just open the floor so you can ask both of them questions, but it's not supposed to be like a lecture tonight, so as well it's a group discussion. So if you've got any thoughts or if you've got any of your own experience of litter picking and you want to share your stories, please do use that time to share those as well. But I'll shut up now and I will hand over to Scott to get started. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jill. And yeah, welcome everyone. We're really pleased to be here today. So I guess if I jump in and give you a bit of a background about Green Hive. So Green Hive is a charity, a small charity still, based in Nairn, up in the Highlands on the Moray coast. And about 10 years ago, we started with the idea of how could we get the community together. And one thing that the community in Nairn were really passionate about was litter picking. And so if I don't know if you've been to Nairn before, but it's got these lovely beaches as well. So the idea was to do a litter pick in and around the town, and then a beach clean in down at the beaches themselves. And the turnout for that ended up being quite tremendous. I think they had on their first day around 30 people turn up around the community, ready to join in, ready to litter pick, and ready to clean up their environment. And that had a knock-on effect. So the initial idea behind the charity was just to get the community together. But then what they realized was that the community was actually very passionate about their environment. And so over the years, and that was, we're talking a decade ago, over the years, we've then continued to develop as a charity and branch out and try to see not just what can we do with the community in order to pick up the litter, but actually what can we do with that litter instead of it going to landfill. And about 6 years ago, they acquired a workshop, also based in Nairn. And from that workshop, the idea behind it was how can we innovate with the waste plastics that we collect, and mostly around high density polyethylene, so like HDPE. So we wouldn't look to recycle anything that we could give to the council and was already part of their closed loop system. But, you know, what we found on the beach that would have to go to landfill, what could we do with that? And the concept was developed that we could actually granulate this plastic down, put it into a sheet press machine. And at first, this just started as essentially a panini press to heat the plastic, allow it to melt down, but really get an idea of what can be done. And we started making these small clocks using this recycled plastic. So it all started quite small. But what we noticed was not only was the community really engaged and excited about doing the litter picks, they were actually also wanting to come into the workshop and help us develop these products as well. So we had this really beautiful circular economy and circular system going in which the community was involved at all aspects. In the last couple of years, we've actually expanded what we've done, and the workshop's grown arms and legs because of its success, because people really like what it is, and because we're taking these waste products and giving them not just a second life, but when you put the plastic through the granulation, through the sheet press, you create these very heavy beams and very heavy sheets, and so they've actually got a lifespan of at least 30 years. So you're taking what was a single-use product and giving it a whole new, long, sustainable life. And 2 years ago, we bought a large sheet press. So to do this on a industrial might be a bit of a push, but on a much larger scale. So it's about 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters. And that started to allow us to go granulate a lot more waste plastics and start to build larger items with them. And the knock-on effect of that was that we started to gain really fantastic partnerships with other local communities, other local organizations, the other local businesses who were seeking to, you know, have a better environmental impact on the products they could pick, but also a better environmental impact on their local environment as well. And I think that's what's really special about Green Hive, is that we're not going to change the world because we're a small organization, but what we can do and what can be replicated all across you know, the United Kingdom, all across Scotland, is the model that we have. And that allows you to take the waste products after a litter pick and transform them into something quite special. So we've now started to look at building out large pieces of furniture. So we've got contracts with the likes of the council, etc., and we do a lot of benches, as well as we've done some memorial benches as well, which can be completely customized. So we've got a CNC machine and a specialist who works in-house for us. So you can actually engrave all of our builds as well. And then by using the coloring that came from the waste plastic, we can create these bespoke pieces, bespoke materials. So we actually get to color and create these completely bespoke sheets that are then used to make these materials. So people can actually say, oh, I'd really like it in blue and yellow, or you know, whatever color it is. And we're just using the waste material and the waste color that we already had in order to do this. And as I was saying, what I love about Green Hive is that this is all started from this community litter pick 10 years ago. And then we acknowledged and realized that the community really wanted to get involved in that. And it's just slowly grown arms and legs to this point that we're at now. And we're starting to see, even though we're a charity, we're now starting to sustain ourselves more, which means we're less reliant on grant funding as well, which is fantastic. And it shows, I guess, what can be done with waste and what's replicable across Scotland and you know, anywhere really.
Great, thank you so much, Scott. I've scribbled down quite a few questions for you, but I think I'll hold on to them just now, and we'll just hand straight over to Mike. Yes. And we'll hear from you first, and then we'll do questions.
No problem.
Scott, that's absolutely class. I've just taken Scott's taken waste into wonders and stuff. I'm coming up with all these headlines. Absolutely brilliant.
Great to hear.
Oh, incredible. And yeah, Sam, your glasses are amazing. Very nice. I can see your little glasses in the camera there. No, guys, yeah, I'm Mike Scotland. I'm the founder of Community Cleanup. And yeah, I think from my approach towards the whole litter picking side, it comes quite deep, dark, and very personal, unfortunately. But I will hopefully be able to explain what I may not recycle all the plastics, but I believe in recycling negatives and turning them into positives, which I'm hoping to share with everyone today. Um, so for me, just to give you a bit of a background, back in 2018, I had what I call a realization. Some people might call it a mental health breakdown. But for me, breakdown's quite negative. So if I call it a realization, I get to cling on to the positive things. And to cut a long story short, I basically went through an episode while I was in the passenger seat of my car, with my partner driving and my little man in the back. And I had an anxiety attack, which was first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. But basically, the whole car felt as if it was closing in on me. And without getting too graphic into the details, I ended up being this little person stuck inside my own head, screaming for help. But yet there was no words coming out my mouth. Um, but what that did do is it prevented us from having to go shopping in Aberdeen that day, and we ended up going to the park instead. Because my partner realised that there was obviously something wrong with me when she looked down and seen me curled up in a ball in the car seat. And when we got to a local park, I just remember feeling the car stop, basically coming to, sprinting out the car, and basically falling into a heap against a small portaloo and just crying. And my partner had came over, and I just remember looking up to her and saying, like, I need help. Something's not right. I need help. Now, back in 2018, I'm rocking the dad bod just now, but I was in good shape, had a good job, nice loving family. Probably I was doing okay in life. So for me to experience that and to be sitting down crying in a local park was quite heavy, quite embarrassing to be honest. And I knew I needed help, but I didn't know what the form of help would be. It's something new. I understood that it's my brain's in my head and my body, so I must call the doctor. So the doctor gave me some support with, medication, and he gave me other options that were available at the time. And for that next 5 months, I tried to basically look inside myself from my very past to understand what caused me to feel like that day. And I went through all my memories as far as I could remember from a child, questioning why I would do certain things in certain ways, why would I avoid certain people in certain situations. But the only problem was, as I was trying to ask all these questions of myself, I wasn't getting any additional support at the time, and I was drinking alcohol. And unfortunately, I was walking to and from the shops, drinking alcohol uh, in the shop itself, and then going down to a local riverside, which was a known dumping ground. And I would have more alcohol and then go home as if nothing happened. But unfortunately, doing that whole process and trying to ask all these questions of myself was quite overwhelming. And the only way I can describe it, it was like pulling off too many plasters all at one time. And all these questions I was asking of myself, I didn't have any answers, and it got a little bit too much for me. And unfortunately, one day, after going to the shops on the way back, I decided that's it. I don't want to be here anymore. I can't keep going through this every day with these thoughts in my head. Um, I walked down the stairs to the riverside and the dumping ground, grabbed hold of the handrail, and just before I jumped in, I got a phone call. Uh, And that kind of pulled me back to reality because it's something I wasn't expecting. And it was basically a phone call that saved my life. Um, and I wish it was something positive like my dad or a friend, but it was actually my ex's mum who I really don't like. So unfortunately, that woman saved my life. But after receiving that call and still being alive, essentially, I realized that I've been given a second life here. I can't muck this up. I need to do something a little bit different. So I went public, I went online, social media, and on World Mental Health Day 2019, I basically declared it to the world that, my name is Mike Scotland and I struggle with mental health and it's okay. And after putting that online, what I didn't expect is the amount of people that contacted me from all across the world that said, I've seen your video, and just to let you know, I feel the same. And I couldn't believe that because I genuinely thought I was the only person that was feeling how I was feeling. And to be able to publicly put it out there and see so many people relate to that, that was incredible. And that led me to create a group called Man Up Speak Up, which was designed for people that worked offshore to tap into this online network where people could just speak, not have to be a position or a father or a mother or anyone. They just got to be an individual and speak about anything they wanted to, but we could all relate with each other because we were stuck offshore, whether it be a vessel, a rig, or whatever it is, we could understand that of enclosure. But after those months went by, I was telling everyone to speak up and do all these good things, but I wasn't staying true to myself because every time I walked to the shops near my house, I would always cross the road to where that stairs went down to the dumping ground. And I couldn't bring myself to look at it because it just flooded me with all these negative thoughts. Until one day I thought, I need to practice what I preach here. So I thought, I'm going to face my demons. I'm going to go down to that dumping ground, but I'm going to try and clean it up. Because I thought the logic for me was if I clean that dumping ground up, maybe it'll be like a self cleanse and I'll feel better. So I went down there with 3 black bags one morning, first time I ever litter picked back in 2019, and I just started picking up some litter. And there was a person cycling past at the time, and he stopped on his bike and he shouted down. He said, "Hello, hello." That's me trying to be Italian, so bear with me. He shouted down, "Hello." And I've got social anxiety, so I don't actually like speaking to people in public. I just pretended that I didn't see him. And then eventually he shouted loud enough that I thought, he's going to know I'm not deaf. So I turned around and said, "Oh, hello, I didn't see you there." Totally lying. But he said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm litter picking." He said, "Do you want a hand?" And I felt every ounce of my body wanted to say, "No, go away, get back on your bike and leave me alone." But I thought, no, you've came down here for a reason. You need to face your fears, and one of them is social anxiety. So me and Massimo De Bella, we started picking up litter together, and we done this for maybe 2 hours, right? But during that 2 hours, we filled these 3 black bags up. I mean, these were monster bags. I don't. They must have been like a B&M buy or something. These things were massive. We filled them up. But for these 2 hours, the conversations that we had were conversations I never experienced all at once before. Like some friends, you might talk about things in common with your friends, right? But it would be an enclosed topic because you'd kind of have to just talk about stuff that's similar. I've got a big football background. You talk to football guys, you talk about football. But with Massimo, we just started talking about everything, family, backgrounds, favorite colors, dreams, you name it. We spoke about it. And I was like, everyone should do this. Everyone needs to go and pick up litter and speak to people. And I just thought, this is amazing. And I said to Massimo, after we'd finished picking up these 3 bags of litter, I says, I'm going to create a group and it's going to go viral. And he laughed at me in his Italian laugh. Yeah. It's an Italian laugh, just bear with me. And I says, no, I've done it before with another group. Watch. So I struggled from insomnia. So the following morning at 2:30 in the morning, I created this group called Community Cleanup. I designed the logo. I set the group up on Facebook, and I thought, right, I'm going to run an event for that weekend. So this happened on the Wednesday, and I run an event on the Saturday between 10 and 12. And I genuinely believed that the whole of Aberdeen would arrive and everyone would clean up this riverside because I just believed it so much. So I put the event out and just have a think to yourself, how many people do you think showed up? Most people say you and Massimo, but 4 people showed up. And I thought, you know what? That's enough for me to realize that there's a want to do this. People want to get involved to something new. So 4 people showed up. In that 2 hours, we cleaned 300 kilograms of rubbish along the riverside, which it might not sound like a great deal, but when you think of how small them little crisp packets are when they're empty, it's quite a lot of rubbish. But we barely skimmed the surface of that riverside because it was a known dumping ground around Aberdeen for decades. So I thought, right, I'm just going to run a group event every Saturday for as long as it takes to clean it up. So for months, I was running a litter picking event down there through community cleanup because more and more people got involved. There was more hands on deck, and people were literally coming around from all over the UK to clean up in that area. It, and then I had to try and explain to them the whole purpose of the group is that you can do it in your own area. But thanks for coming along. And after it was probably about 5 or 6 months, as a community, we removed 13,500 kilograms of litter from a 300-meter river stretch of the riverside. We removed 2,500 kilograms of metal from the river itself, which actually brought otters to swim upstream for the first time in 40 years. We then changed that riverside into a viewing platform to people to actually come down the new stairs that nobody had even seen before and appreciate the nature that was down there. We changed an area of the ground. We managed to basically re-soil it and turned it into a nature trail, a fairy village. We then run seasonal events to bring people down to the community to see what can be achieved when like-minded people come together with the same goal, but also understand that this is what can be done from all ages. You know, it wasn't just adults that came down. It was children. It was elderly people, not just to litter pick, but actually to develop the area. Now, I'll be honest, I'm more of a demolisher than a builder. But people came down for their own reasons why. And I think for me, that was one of the most important things above the litter picking itself, was that everyone could look at the litter as something negative, but it took their energy and their effort to turn it into something positive. But that also led to a lot of different perspectives because you're not just picking up someone else's litter, you're actually cleaning the environment and making it a better place to live in for everyone and the animals around it. And when some of the kids came down and saw the otters swim upstream, eh, their little faces, you can't put a price or a value on that because it literally was one of the best things I'd ever seen is kids shouting an otter, especially in likes of Aberdeen. And it became like a natural attraction. It drew people down. People were coming down there for work. But one thing was the litter picking was then self-sufficient. You know, there was never any litter there. We managed to install bins that the council then cleaned. So people were appreciating what happens with when you remove litter, but when you don't litter, which is obviously the most important thing. So for me as a person, being able to have that story and with my mental health challenges as well, one thing I have the opportunity and privilege to do now is I get to speak to a lot of people all around the world. So whether it's a company, a community group, or teachers at schools, I get called in to do basically a talk, and in return, whoever asks me to do a talk, they have to then do a litter pick. So they get to experience what it's really like being surrounded by individuals that aren't just a general manager of a company or the person that's doing all the cleaning or the person that's cooking all the meals for the company or anything like that. They get to meet individuals for who they are and really get to know them through general conversations that they might never have at the workplace or the school or in the dressing room or wherever it is. And I think for me, it's just a reminder that we're all people at the end of the day. And what makes us special is being around other people, being able to share that time, being able to share that energy. Like yourself, Scott, you'll be surrounded by a team. And we're touching on community, but sometimes I feel community need the opportunity to get involved with something to really find what they can connect with. But one thing that I always use during my talks is I always bring some retro litter with me. I'm a bit of a retro litter geek, right? So I have like some here. Now, I don't know if you can see this properly on the screen. Can anyone see how much that cost? 6p. Imagine if you could get 6p for Maltesers nowadays. I think I'd be a lot bigger than I am now, I'll tell you that. This one here cost 7D/3p. So this one here is from the 1970-71. And my final one, this is one I normally talk to kids about, right? This crisp packet costs 4D. So when I go to schools and I ask them, what does 4D stand for? They all say four-dimensional, but I've never seen a crisp that costs four-dimensional. So basically, this is before 1970. This one here is from 1968. Now, one thing I try and explain to kids is when it comes to your actions, all actions have consequences, just like your words. And just like these people that threw down them litter over 50 years ago, they might have just thought, oh, it's just one bit of litter. Doesn't matter. But when you have millions of people all around the world doing that every day, those little things, they do matter and they do affect people and they do affect animals and the environment, not just when they throw it down, but for over 50 years. And when it comes to words as well, especially for somebody that struggles with their own mental health challenges, words can be pretty impactful too. With your communication, you might just say something that might mean small for you, might seem something silly. Oh, I was just having a joke. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. But those little words, they can be quite damaging too, because they can really affect people. And you can never know what somebody else is going through. And with those actions, it's up to you. We all have choices, but it's down to everyone to make the right one. And you can always make a negative one into a positive one. You just need to want to make the change. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much. That just, yeah, I mean, I only heard a little taste of that when you spoke to me over the phone, Mike. So it's incredible to hear that whole story. It's just really, really inspirational. And I'm so glad I got both yourself and Scott from Green Hive, because they're quite different stories of different directions that your litter picks have gone in, but there's still it's the same thing, isn't it? It's bringing communities together to build it into something bigger. So I have lots of questions for both of you, actually, but if anybody else also has something they'd like to say, please stick your hand up use the little Zoom emoji thing, hand up, if you want to say something, or if you don't want to speak, that's absolutely fine. You can also stick questions or comments in the chat and I'm happy to read them out for you. But giving people a chance to do that, my first, I think I'll just ask you, Mike, just because you were just speaking there. I mean, one of the things about, like, if because like you said, it's kind of, you're very much the leader of this and it's kind of your project, and although you've got all these other people on board, you're still kind of running the show. And like, my question, I guess, is like, do you ever feel burnt out or exhausted, or just feel like it's too much admin and you want a break?
No, I think for me, this will maybe sound a little bit silly, but just bear with me. For me, this is kind of like going for a run or going to the gym. When it comes to running groups, especially on the magnitude that community cleanup and man up speak up is, it has to be a lifestyle. It doesn't become like a hobby anymore. It becomes a way of life. And obviously, I mean, with me working offshore 2 weeks at a time, my time at home is spent, right, what days are my kids at nursery and school? That's the days I'm going to do speeches. So for me, I always think I've been given a second life now, and my time is, I feel like I need to give it back in some form of way. But I feel with the mental health talks, yeah, sometimes they can be quite heavy, because I touched on a small portion of it today. But for me, a lot of the time is going back into those moments and reliving them. That can take quite a lot of energy. And I still live with these mental health challenges. I have big mood drops. For some days that I struggle, finding positives and being happy, which are challenging, and it's just riding through the storm. But I think, being invited to talks like these it's quite uplifting, because I know that there's other people that are doing good as well. Like I'm speaking to yourself, I'm being able to speak to Scott for the first time. Other people have and wanting to invest in their time to join. For me, that gives me energy back. So it's pros and cons. The energy side from the litter picking is amazing, but yeah, sometimes the mental health stuff, it can be quite a struggle.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. I don't see any hands up, but Scott, I had a question for you as well, and it was I was just kind of curious. I mean, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like I was curious as to how Green Hive made that leap from. I think you mentioned, so you started out doing these litter picks, and then you called like a panini press or something. I just wondered, like, how did you make that leap in terms of like funding that? You mentioned having funders and applying for grants and stuff. Like, what was the kind of step that had to get taken to get from doing litter picks to pressing plastic, essentially?
It's a great question, and I will answer it. I'm just going to say, Mike, thank you so much for sharing your story. That was really inspiring, and I'm really impressed with not just your own personal journey, but what you've then done with community cleanup since. So thank you for sharing. So it's quite a funny one. We sort of fell onto it in that we knew we had these waste plastics and waste material from our litter picks, but we weren't quite sure what to do with it. And someone within Green Hive put out an advert to say, "Does anyone have any ideas?" And this gentleman Andy, who had an arts background, um, got in touch with Green Hive, and he was like, "Oh, I think I could, maybe do something with it, but I'm not really sure what I can do." And so he came in, and this was before we had the workshop, and he just started to have a play around and had seen what waste materials we had. And he already does a lot of sculptures and welding, and is a blacksmith in his own right, along with an arts background. But working with plastic was completely new. And it's not a material that a lot of people work with, obviously, being a waste material. So there's not a lot of knowledge sharing at this moment, albeit that community is now growing, which is, good and bad. It's great that that's happening. It's a shame that it's happened, the reason it has to happen. And so it started off with this small idea, knowing that we could melt it down. I think they did it by hand first to granulate it, so essentially cutting down the plastics any way they could. And then we got a small panini press just to see what would happen if you melt it. And it's actually in principle, it's not complicated. Actually putting it into practice, there's a lot of small details and things we've learned along the way that obviously if you could go back, you wouldn't have made those mistakes again. But, for example, the cooling of plastic can cause a lot of bubbling, the temperatures you need to get it at, if you want to mix it in order to have these nice sheets and wacky textures and designs. It's better to, melt the plastics by their own independent color first, and then you combine them, and then you make the design. So this was all things that we just sort of had to learn along the way. And we did this both via grant funding, and then also from the start of once we could build and make these clocks with our volunteers, we could then start to almost fund our own activities, or at least partially fund our own activities. And then essentially it's had a domino effect from then. And we now know what we can do with those waste plastics, and it's scaling that up. So we're now at a point where we are at let's say maximum capacity until the end of the year, because there's that much demand now for that, which is fantastic. But again, in a perfect scenario, the workshop wouldn't exist because there would be no waste plastic to work with. But and until that day comes, we're trying to make the best of what we can with those waste materials.
Yeah, it's a strange situation to be in, where you're reliant on the income of like the incoming flow of litter, and it is a funny position to be in. So I know Mark's got his hand up, but actually Louise in the chat did get in there first. I'm going to ask that question, then we'll come to you, Mark. So this is a good question. can anyone just organise a litter pick, or do you need to have health and safety forms, etc.? What do you need to do before you can just go out there and start picking litter?
Well, I give that one to you, Mike. I think you're
Yeah, go for it. Okay, I'm going to be perfectly honest, right? So if, for instance, if you want to do a litter pick in Aberdeen, you are inclined to contact the council. You would fill in relevant documentation to basically tell them where the area that you're going, the reason for it, and all this good stuff, which is amazing. And I know up in Aberdeen, they will give you, I think it's 6 litter pickers, some black bags, and they'll pick up the rubbish for you. However, if you want to do a litter pick, there's nothing stopping you from taking a black bag and just going for it. Whether that's using your hand and washing afterwards, but also using gloves or litter picker or whatever it is. I would just encourage everyone to do it, especially for when it comes to like community cleanup. How it normally works for me now. I'm not a charity; I just do everything voluntary. But if anybody was wanting to arrange a litter pick either themselves or for a group, they basically contact me. I will give them all the equipment they need in terms of high-vis vest, litter pick, hoop, bag, gloves, and I'll even arrange the collection for the litter for them as well. But the easiest answer is, do you need to do all the above? No, you can simply just go out and crack on, which is what I would recommend doing. So I don't know if that answers you, but that's just me being brutally honest.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Scott? Because I could chip in as well, actually, in this one.
Yeah, no, well, I would, we have, because we're a charity, we do have to have our safeguarding policies in place anyway, but that's just from an organizational point of view. But from what I would echo what Mike said there, and just actually getting out and doing it for yourself is the best thing you can do. But yeah, please, jump.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, kind of similar. Like, I mean, anybody, like Mike said, anybody can go out and pick up litter, and it's a good idea to have some gloves and things and keep yourself safe. Don't pick up anything that's too sharp, or have a plan. But I think once you get to the point where you're organising something with a bigger group of people, and it's kind of almost like advertised as a public event, it probably is a good idea to at least let the landowner know. So if it's the council, or if it's like Scottish Wildlife Trust Reserve, let us know that you're planning on doing something like that. And then it is a good idea to just tick all the boxes and have a risk assessment and so on. I mean, I guess another thing, kind of off the back of that, like, I guess you kind of also need to have a plan. If you're collecting like lots and lots of litter, you kind of need to have a plan for what you're going to do with that. I mean, Mike, what do you do at the moment when you're collecting your bags and bags of litter? Where does it go?
So I have an agreement with the council. So normally obviously I've got close connections with the council in Aberdeen. So anytime I arrange any form of litter pick, I give them the address, where it's going to be, the time of collection, and they take all the stuff away at whatever time we basically tell them. And then depending on the area, if we know what sort of litter is going to be there, if it is recyclable, well, then we'll obviously do that as well when it comes to like the bottles, the plastics and the metals and all that stuff in the glass. But if it is literally like a dumping ground, you just get what you can and put in the bin. But we get all our litter picked up by the council.
Yeah. So basically, you need to have a plan for what's going to happen, because like you don't really want to just put it all next to a council bin, because especially I think sometimes councils, it depends on the area. I know, like I think it was in Ayrshire, one of my colleagues was saying they like you to use their bags with the council logo on it and stuff, so they know what it is when they come to collect and so on. So it's worth, if you're doing a big litter pick, it's worth checking these things and keeping yourself right. But yeah, certainly, like, there's nothing to stop one or two people going out with a bin bag and collecting litter. I posted a link in the chat there for Keep Scotland Beautiful, has like a lot of really good advice on how to organise litter picks, and they've also got a kind of map of, I don't know if they've got your house on it, Mike. You probably don't want to get doxed like that, but they've got like a map of like different places around the country where if you want to borrow stuff like the hoops and litter pickers and things, like it's places you can go to pick up that stuff. I was having a look to find out where my local one was yesterday. So that's a really helpful link as well. Mark, you've had your hand up for a while, so I'll pass on to you.
Yeah, hi, thanks. You've actually answered most of it already, sounds like. the guys are getting really good support from their councils, which is what I was going to ask about, getting rubbish collected and stuff. Mike, you mentioned you've actually got bins there now that they put in and that they'll empty and stuff. What sort of a process was that? Were they quite supportive, or did it take a bit of work?
Again, I'm known for my honesty, so I'm going to be honest with you. When I started the litter picking, because of the volume that we were getting down at that dumping ground, our litter picks were, 300 kilograms, 500 kilograms, another three. I understood that it's great that we've removed all this litter, but then people are still going to litter down there. But during a litter pick, I found two massive, like cast iron bins. So I hauled them out the river, cleaned them up a little bit, and basically publicly thanked the council for emptying them going forward. And I just put them right in the spot because I thought, we've just removed all this litter, which you guys have kind of just pushed to the side, not bat an eyelid of, and we've done all the hard work. So if we're doing the hard work, you guys need to chip in. So I just forced their hand on social media, and anytime I've done a litter pick, I thanked them until I got the relationship I have now. I just put them on the spot each and every time. Because a lot of the time you need to ask for the help, you need to ask for the support, and you don't get it because there's too many loopholes.
Mm.
So I just demanded it publicly, and it worked a treat because they still empty these two bags.
Yeah, nice touch, great approach.
Not saying that's the right way, but I know that the social media presence I have, especially on LinkedIn, they're not going to say no. And sometimes in life, you just need to, what do they say? Don't ask for permission. Yeah, so that's my approach, but it worked a treat. So not saying do that, but that's what I done.
Great stuff. Thanks for that.
No worries.
Does anyone else have a question? Or even is anyone here involved in litter picking or done a litter pick before, organised one that they want to share their experience?
I've done a couple when I was down in England. One thing that we did do on one of them was to actually look at the materials that were getting picked and look at which brands were worse, with the idea of actually, going back and giving those brands a bit of stick, or if it's, loads of stuff from Tesco's actually, or whichever the local supermarket is, actually taking that up with them. Don't know if that similar approach has been tried on any of the guys' patches.
Yeah, that's it's great, Mark, that you said that, and that those citizen science pieces that we can do is really good. And we're actually working with a couple of organizations who already do it, and when you start toting up the numbers, it's amazing to see actually how many recurring big brands are shown time and time again. And it's great to see that for policy change as well. So moving away from single-use plastics from plastic bags and then looking at bottles, etc. So doing that kind of citizen science, I would highly encourage, because a lot of organizations use that to then push policy change.
Cool. What is it about people that drink Monster? So many Monster cans, just shocked.
Shambles. Absolute shambles.
We had this or have this fantastic volunteer, and Nairn is a relatively small town, and last year she went out on a mission to collect cans, and she collected over 1,000 cans in our local area. It's just mind-boggling that someone's going out and doing that, and that amount of litter can be picked by one individual going out to do it. So I mean, hands off to her, a fantastic job from our side of things, but I wish she didn't need to do that in the first place.
Yeah, I also sorry, Claire, you go ahead, you go first.
I wanted to ask Scott if he said he ended up got a good relationship with local businesses. Did they change what sort of waste they were likely to produce?
So it was more, sorry, first of all, thank you very much, Claire, and great question. It was more from actually taking products from us. So it would be the likes of local hotels or golf clubs. They actually, instead of buying furniture and outdoor furniture that was made from virgin products and virgin materials, they actually bought it from us. And so instead they've got these installed completely recycled pieces of furniture that have that 30-40 year lifespan.
Great.
No, really, which is lovely to see when that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to ask a bit of a daft question, but it was just like, especially what you were saying, Mike, about the sort of social side of the litter pick and how you're having these like really deep conversations and getting to know people and people from different walks of life and having the kind of conversations you wouldn't normally. And so it's like that kind of quite like, yeah, intimate experience of working something together. I know like you got me thinking about how I know that we have like one of our reserves is Handa Island. It's this kind of remote island in the north of Scotland where like volunteers go and they spend like a few weeks to a few months every summer counting birds and clearing paths and showing tourist around and stuff. And I know that there's been at least one wedding as a result of Handa Island volunteering. So I was just curious, has there been anything like that? Has there been a litter picking wedding, or maybe not something as dramatic as that, but like, do you get to see like friendships forming and like other things happening as a result of people meeting through litter picks?
Yeah, probably not so much a wedding, but the amount of friendships that have been made through coming to like an organized event, or I do quite a lot of things sporadic. If I've got time, I'll just kind of pick one day out of the blue. I'm like, right, I need to go, and then I'll put it live on Facebook, and then people will just come along, and some people would wait to see who's there, and then they just all of a sudden appear. So then there were some couples that ended up doing that and then going off and doing their own litter pick. So like there has been quite a lot of, friendships and relationships blossom for that, which again, if you take the view away from litter and look at all the stuff that gets created around about it, that's what I love. So yeah, not a wedding just yet. But there has been a lot of good relationships blossom from it, which is pretty cool.
Sam, you put your hand up. Oh, you're still muted.
Oh,
sorry, Sam. I'm trying to see if I can unmute you. I can ask you to unmute, so maybe you're getting a wee pop-up coming up to say unmute. Is that working?
that's a shame.
Well, if we can't get it to work, so I'll have another go, but if not, you could even just put what you were going to say in the chat and I can read it out for you. Okay, great. Okay.
And in the interim, I just wanted to comment on Mike.
This is full of retro litter. It's just like my box I take everywhere. I literally see during lockdown, I used to go for my walk, and then there was like this area that was just full of stuff from like the 90s, and I thought, what? And then I kept digging, and it was the 80s, then the 70s, and then the 60s. And it turned out there was quite a couple of factories near that area that were run down, that didn't exist anymore. But some of the local people that worked in that factory, we'd go down there for lunch, and that's where it went to. They would throw down their litter, then the seasons would put the soil and then the leaves on, and then the same again for years. So yeah, I've got a massive collection. I would go home, clean them, and then I thought I'll just collect them for a rainy day. But I show them to kids now so they can see that if you throw it on the ground, this is what
so
actually happens.
And I imagine it's really impactful when you do that in
Yeah.
talking to children. For them, if they're 10 years old and you're saying this is five times your lifetime, and it's I think there's a huge impact there to be had. Really, really.
No, absolutely.
Also, children love litter picking. Like we do these wildlife watch kids clubs, and we had one session that I was at where it literally just did litter picking for the whole session, and the kids had an incredible time. It was a bit of a competition, not necessarily retro litter, but one kid found an old smashed iPhone, and nobody could top that in terms of like cool litter. So
See, my three. So like when I started litter picking, my son was 18 months. So he's been litter picking from when he was 18 months. And he's now 7 and he still does it all the time. And now my youngest, who's just about to turn 2, she does it all the time as well now. We all go out with our little litter pickers and our family walk. So it's pretty cool. Well, we think it's cool.
Yeah. It is cool. No, it's fantastic.
Claire, did you have something else you wanted to chip in with?
Yes, yes. There was the TV program, I don't know, actually 2 or 3 years ago about litter and landfill and what happens to waste. And a lot of the very old landfill sites were on the coast. And with sea erosion, some of the very old landfill sites are being excavated by the sea. And the landfill is being taken out and moved along the coast. So some of your retro litter might actually be from landfill.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Mm.
Sam's
A bit worrying, actually.
Sorry.
It's a bit worrying, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sam's posted a question. It's a good one. So, do either of you find that the amount or the rate of littering has reduced? So, like psychologically, seeing a clean space means that people are less likely to drop litter. I think you kind of touched on that, Mike, didn't you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a tricky one because I guess it depends where you go. For instance, I see the majority of the litter I see is beside roads. So it's quite hard to gauge if that's people just walking and putting it down, or if it's just randomers going past and just throwing it. It's a really good question, that one. But I think certainly for the area for where I started the community cleanup down at that riverside, there's not much litter that gets thrown down there anymore. So, I would like to think that because kind of people know what used to be there and what it is now, that psychological, aspect of don't make it worse or don't make it go backwards because it's like this now. I think that is a natural deterrent. And I always rather than trying to tell people, oh, stop throwing down litter, I would always encourage people just to pick litter up in front of others as well. I think that's quite a good psychological mechanism to show them what they can do instead of telling them what they shouldn't. Especially when I take kids out doing litter picks with schools, or certainly my own kids, that is the deterrent enough for adults to think, I don't really want a kid to pick up my litter. So it's a really tricky question. That's probably the best I can answer it, to be honest.
I could just chime in as well. So I think the theory around it is all around the broken window theory, and I really believe that the knock-on effect of cleaning a space up, and Mike, just as you've proved already at the Riverside in Aberdeen, once you've cleaned it up, it's not returned to what it was before, even though, yes, there still might be some litter, but you can change the mentality of people by changing the environment and cleaning the environment. And generally, if something is dirty, people are less inclined to people can't just keep it clean. They'd have to clean it up, as Mike did, which is a lot more, sorry, I'm going to just need to plug myself in, which is a lot more effort than just actually maintaining something. So I think actually when you do that activity, do that litter pick, do that beach clean, and you clean that area, or that riverside clean as you did, Mike, and you make that area much cleaner, people are much more likely to maintain that because they don't need to do the hard work of really cleaning that area up.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're coming towards. I've got two questions in the chat. So Roy came in and said, and I think this is about community cleanup, so just asking, is the litter picking group just for locals?
No, so the whole concept of community cleanup is it's wherever you are in the world, because it's you doing the act of litter picking that draws in that community. So for instance, the second weekend that we were running a litter picking group in Aberdeen, I was also running a litter pick over in Vietnam and Ghana on the same day through Facebook Live. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world or who you are, anyone can get involved because it's the people you draw in is your new community. So it's wherever you go. It doesn't matter what country you're at or what city, there will be litter there. And the whole point of picking that litter up, you're going to draw in like-minded individuals. So it's not for locals, or it can be for locals, but it can be for absolutely anyone, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably our last, unless anyone wants to get in really quickly, I think probably our last question of the evening is quite a philosophical one from Autumn, saying, do you think it's possible that the Great Pacific garbage patch is still growing because people don't have to face it in their everyday lives? It's that kind of sight unseen, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And I would personally, as my own personal opinion, I would say yes. If it's unseen, it's not really, it doesn't feel like your problem a lot of the time, and that's just a lot of human mentality there. So I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say the same, and I also think if they won't understand the effects as well. Like I often, when it comes to mental health, I use an analogy to get people to kind of understand what it's like for things that they don't see. And I always say, for instance, what's your favorite color? So if I was born blind and had no concept of the world around me, could you explain your favorite color to me? And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know, it'd be extremely difficult, but then you've also got to explain it to me in a way that I understand. And with that being said, it's about, just because you can't see something, it doesn't mean it's not there. In, for instance, like that, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, you don't see it, you don't know it's there, so you're not asking the questions. But I think if it was publicized a lot more and put in front of people to give them the opportunity to question, it might give them half a chance to try and understand why it's there and understand the effects it's causing, because essentially a lot of people would be contributing towards that and they might not even know it. So yeah, it's hopefully that kind of answers it a little bit. But yeah, really good question. That's a great question.
And it kind of applies to wildlife biodiversity loss as well, and the idea of like people being disconnected from nature, and like children being disconnected from nature, and like how can children grow up to care about something that they haven't seen and they haven't experienced if they're not getting access to quality green space and inspiring wildlife encounters and so on. So yeah, it's got a kind of bigger it's a bigger question as well. Great, we're literally at 1 minute to 8, so thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to do, before I say thank you to our speakers and wind up, just one last little plug. So I know probably a lot of people on this call are already on this mailing list, but if you're not, so we have, like I said at the beginning, we're really trying to build up this network of people all across Scotland who are wanting to do something for nature where they live, to take action locally and to work with the people that they live with and their neighbours and so on. So we've built up a mailing list. So if you're interested in these kinds of events and you want to know more, or you want to get notified when we do more, we're going to try and do some in-person events as well in Glasgow later this year. If you want to find out about those, I'm just going to post a little link to the mailing list in the chat. So please do, if you're not already on it and you would like to find out more about these kind of events, please do sign up at the link that I've just put in the chat. But yeah, that brings us to 8 o'clock. So I'm just going to say thank you again so much to both our speakers. Like I said, I was really keen to do a webinar on litter. I think it's a great topic, and I feel incredibly lucky that I got two very inspirational, very interesting, very different, very complementary speakers to give us some really inspiring stories about what you can do if you just go out with a bin bag and some gloves and start picking up some litter, and how it can really build into something much bigger and more impactful, which can involve the whole community and people from all walks of life. So it's been really inspirational, and thank you everyone I don't know where you are in the country, but here it's a beautiful sunny evening. So I'm very grateful that people have decided to stay indoors on Zoom for just an hour to join with us and share in with the conversation. So like I said, it's recorded. If you join that mailing list, you'll be able to get a link to the recording if you want to catch up with it again. And yes, please tell all your friends. That's what it's all about, community organising. So thank you very much, Scott and Mike, and thanks everyone for joining us. And I'll just say good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to yourself as well, Jill, for putting all this together. I think it's absolutely brilliant what you guys do, and much appreciated for inviting me along. Thank you, and thanks for everybody joining.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye, everyone.